Let me ask you, Rinpoche, the world seems to be abuzz right now with next week, with that date of December 21st, 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar. Are there any teachings in Tibetan Buddhism that talk specifically about this time that we are now, which I think is quite clear, whether you are interested in the Mayan calendar or not, whether you're interested in any kind of spirituality or not? The world definitely seems to be in transition, and at a time that all over the world there are people rising up against basically tyrants, including right here. Things seem to be on the verge of changing. What does Tibetan Buddhism tell us about this time that we're in?
You know, whenever we make an inquiry into some big question, that we have to have a context in order to be able to understand answers. So, in one way, first of all, I will say that I have never heard or read, and in my scholarship of my previous life, I have never come across any mention of this time period as being the end of the world.
Right.
And although I have seen quite recently on the Internet that people saying that some unknown Tibetan lamas are definitely saying that the world will end next week. So this to answer the question simply. However, we could look at it in many different contexts to get many different kinds of answers. If we look at it astrologically, which is what people are really working with, that we can see that there is some special alignment that happened 2,500 years ago, which interestingly enough is right around the time of Lord Buddha Shakyamuni. And so we could say that he was a dramatic change in the atmosphere of the world, like if you want to talk about big change. This planetary alignment, I think, has a very good and important method to understand some larger dynamics. You know, the way the sun and the moon affect us, that I recall some years ago that I was present during a solar eclipse. I think I was living in California at the time. And during that time, I observed very carefully my feelings while the eclipse was going on. And I felt what they call bereft. I felt that something that was there before wasn't there during the eclipse. And what was there, this was a total eclipse, and what was missing was a kind of continuous stream of whatever you want to call scientifically ions or, whatever we want to call it, photons maybe, that the energy of our connection between ourselves and the sun wasn't there when it should have been.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried very hard to remain objective while I was observing this. And I realized there was something to this. And so perhaps the astrology, which studies the emotional content or the personality content of the position of the stars, has some validity. However, this particular alignment, that the fear factor, which is the fallout and the kind of media frenzy that has created a lot of anxiety, natural anxiety that people already had, and stirred it up in creating this cosmic event. So I think this is not a very good system to think about the end of the world.
Right, and actually I personally was not talking about the end of the world. We had actually two Mayan shamans as our guests, maybe as long as a year ago, I'm not sure, but we talked about that among other things. And they were very clear, and everything that I read is very clear that the end of the Mayan calendar does not in any way denote the end of the world, whatever that means. I mean, we have to define what the world means before we even talk about that. But
Absolutely.
but rather it means the end of an era. And the way they explain the shift that is coming is that the end of the era, this is the end of the era that we're in currently, and that has really come to a climax now. The era of one person ruling over another, of one country ruling over others, of one system ruling over others, of as they say biblically, man ruling over nature, and really doing his best, it seems, to end nature, and we know it, of exploitation of other humans and exploitations of other creatures and exploitation of the earth herself. So it's the end of this warlike, fearful, exploitative, painful stage in human development, and into a new era, which is one of collaboration, cooperation, compassion, love, mutual support, etc., which, I mean, anyone who looks at the state of the world currently, even if you just think about it in environmental terms, we must switch to that, or indeed it will be the end of the world as we know it. So,
I agree with you. You've really, I can tell that you have really given this a great deal of consideration.
Yeah. So what does Tibetan Buddhism tell us about that? Why don't you expand on what I have said and tell us about it from your point of view?
First of all, let me clarify one point, is that I believe in Buddhism. Even in Tibet, we never had this idea of Tibetan Buddhism.
Oh, okay.
That we could divide Buddhism, and we could say, and probably the more correct way, which is a little longer, and I don't care if you say it or not, but the Buddhism as it was practiced in Tibet. We could say Buddhism as it is practiced in Japan, Buddhism as it's practiced in Sri Lanka. But what is common to all of these is Buddhism itself. And so the teachings of Buddhism regarding the end of the world, that we have a very tidy and exciting cosmology. In fact, it's one of the subjects which is taught, not extensively, but taught in the monasteries. And so in our cosmology, world's end, this is not surprising. We could look at our science and look out to the stars, and we could see that, in fact, in other places, worlds are ending. Planets are exploding. Worlds, star systems, galaxies collide into each other. That this is not an unusual occurrence. And, in fact, this world definitely will end. And so the problem becomes, on a larger scale, that we know that sometime it's going to end. Even in the Christian tradition, thinking about who was this Noah person, who survived with a number of people and animals and repopulated the world. So the world sort of ended at the time of this person named Noah. And so our Buddhism says that this concern that we have can go two ways. We are concerned and care for our world, for the continuity of those who will come after us. And we have a personal care, which is our own safety, which is cared for on a moment-by-moment basis.
Mm-hmm. So what, again, looking at Buddhism, Does it teach that people should be involved in the world, in the material world, and be active in it, or does it promote more a life of introspection and separation from the material world?
I believe both. That naturally we must care for our world, that we must help others, and that we're interacting with others almost continuously. However, each human life or stage of life has certain features, that there is a time for children to go to school and time for young adults to be working and earning money and making families, that there's a time for people after having a working career to retire, and there are times in the Oriental system where people who get older live lives of greater introspection, and only rarely do younger people feel drawn to that life. And so we can't force people. We can't force people to meditate. However, we can orchestrate our society so that a simpler life is reasonable and not seem so crazy like it is now.
Mm-hmm. And what would the society like that look like, and how different would it be from what we know?
This coming up in a couple of weeks here, I think starting on the 28th of December is the beginning of our White Conch Dharma Center winter retreat. And the subject of the first part of our retreat is going to be living a simpler life. Mm-hmm. So this is something that I am in the preparation stages for that particular series of teachings, as well as living among, here we're just north of Black River Falls, living among many Amish neighbors. And of course, they have their own ideas of what is a simpler life with their carriages and their great simplicity and rejection of modern technology. So two methods. One is rejection of modern life, and the other one is only having as much as you need, only taking as much as you need, only using as much as you need, not wasting. And this is sort of where we're at here at Lotus Lake, that we live a life of simplicity using computers, cell phones, etc., but living so that we waste nothing and we only use what we absolutely need to use. So it's really a normal way to do things.
Yeah, just
now is the Christmas season, and people are, even at this moment, perhaps listening to this show on their cell phones while they are out there at the mall buying sweaters and socks and shoes and hats and fancy gloves with Santas on them and socks with chili peppers running up to your knees. And thinking, perhaps even just now, thinking, do they really need this?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Do they need another reindeer sweater simply because I have to buy them something?
Right. So we are all, to some degree or another, trapped in it. Myself, I'm not a Christian. I do not celebrate Christmas. I don't believe in having more than I need or in buying things for people who don't need them. But because if I don't do that for some dear and near people, I do end up doing it. I do it every year at the fair trade fair, so I know that at least everything that I buy, or at least I hope so, goes to some good cause. But I also know that a lot of it will end up just thrown in kids' rooms, kids who have already way more than they need, and, will be forgotten the next day, but I must do it. So advice, how does one, and this is just really a small kind of momentary picture of the world that we live in. But we all, I think, at least the listeners to this show are probably mostly people who really care about living life better, but we all drive cars, or, most of us drive cars and use electricity and are wasteful in many ways. So how do we get to that better place of simplicity and really doing only what we must do to survive and, maybe survive well, let's say?
Esty, there's a kind of mindfulness which is oppressive and punitive. And then there's a kind of simplicity. There's a kind of simplicity which is fun. I go for the fun type of simplicity. For example, even though with Buddhism, that I also give Christmas gifts, not a lot, because, people have as much as they need. However, to those who I do give Christmas gifts, that I did a fun preparation this year, that before the frost got to all of the plants, that I went out and I took snippings from our beautiful coleus in our garden here at Lotus Lake, and I put it in water, and then eventually they found their way into pots and individual pots, which I happened to purchase at our local thrift store, put ribbons on it, and those were the gifts that I gave. In addition, after the seed pods had dried from our garden, I took the sweet basil, stems of sweet basil, and our beautiful zinnias this year, and our perennial geraniums, and I made little packets of seeds from our Buddhist retreat land to give to people. And this was all my work, and this is my point, is that if you want to live simply, it's going to take more work, more personal work. It's very easy to take money and to buy something, but when you have to make something that's meaningful and useful to others, then you are, I think, more in the spirit of the season. What do you think?
I love everything that you say, and I love it also as just an idea for next year, though I don't know that this would be satisfying to kids, but surely there's a way I can find to extend it to kids. So thank you. Yes.
I have one more idea.
Sure.
And this one would work for the kids. All year long, people come to visit, students come to see me, and what is the most holy object that you could offer to a lama or to a teacher? Huh?
Tell us.
Huh?
I don't know.
Chocolate.
Oh, okay, me too.
Food of the gods.
Without being a lama, yeah, I'm with you.
But sadly, we Tibetans are not very big on chocolate. That someone once told me, never give chocolate to a Tibetan. That they will only eat it out of kindness to you, and that's a waste of good chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do here at Lotus Lake is all of the chocolate which is offered to me. I go to Hawaii, to Germany, to many different places teaching, and here at the retreats, and people bring me chocolates almost continuously. And we throw them all in the freezer, and in a certain time in December, we melt them all down, and we add nuts and berries and all kinds of good things to it, salted chocolate with peppers, etc., hot pepper.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and this the children would really like, and we give the chocolates back.
Yes, okay. All right, thank you. We do have a caller for you. We want to invite other people to join the conversation. 256-2001-1866. 899 WORT. I'm Esty Dinur. I'm talking with Domo Geshe Rinpoche. She's a teacher in the Buddhist tradition as practiced in Tibet. Hi, caller, you're on the air.